Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Average Home Tool. A couple of friends of mine reached out to me on Facebook, said they wanted to see how to rebuild a carburetor on one of these things, so here we go. Oh, 8mm. This is the Tecton 1/4 inch set. You know what? Look at that. There's my fuel line. Okay, so I need to order some more parts. Be back in a couple of days. Okay, it's been a couple of days. Apologies for that. I got my carburetor kit, gasket kit from UXL, and I've got a little no-name fuel line kit here. The first step is going to be to take the carburetor linkage off, which should just be as easy as this here. And there we have it. Primer line. No, we don't have the fuel line hooked up. Remember, it split on us. Good old evaporative emissions there. It doesn't dump it out into the atmosphere like it looks like it would, but it does. It just recirculates it within the air box. Okay, underneath here is the fuel pump, which, as you can see, the primer line is connected to. This is what pulls the fuel from the tank. Under here is the diaphragm, which is what pushes the fuel up into the carburetor to be burned. We're going to start with the diaphragm. Now this relief port right here, this relief port allows atmospheric pressure in and out, and that's how it gets its reference signal to pump. Now, take notice that the diaphragm itself sits on top of the gasket, and this one is, it doesn't feel very good. The gasket's probably okay, but I have new. Before I pull that out, this here is the needle. Okay, so that diaphragm pushes on this pivot, and can you see that needle opening up there? It pulls the needle up and allows fuel in, and then shuts the fuel off. This is the idle jet here, and then this is the inlet screen. Now first you set your gasket down. And you can put a little fuel on that to help it stick, but generally I just try to hold as still as possible. It's a beautiful night here. It's almost 80 degrees outside, and it's still March. We're due for some storms tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm going out of town, but if I lose any trees, I want this saw running, so when I get back I can clean it up immediately. You don't have to kill these screws, just snug them down. I don't know if it looks like I'm putting a ton of torque on them or not, but I'm not. Alright, fuel pump. It's advisable to hold a little tension on the throttle blade, because this casting right here, this is your idle screw, and the throttle blade will push this off. when I get back, I also have to take the intake manifold off of that Corvette to change the map sensor and the oil pressure sensor. Now, on the fuel pump, the gasket sits above the bladder, and it's just a flimsy piece of, feels like mylar. Here's our new pump. I'm gonna take the cap, because the gap has two tips, protrusions, and they'll help hold it steady for me. Gasket, bladder, again, hold pressure on the throttle. And that's it. You've just rebuilt a carburetor. There's not a lot to these. Now, oh, I hope there's no gas in this thing. Oh, good, there's not. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky. Here's the stub of the fuel line here. And we got to push it down through the tank. Let me grab a flashlight and I'll show you. If you look down in there, you'll see the line in the fuel filter. So it has to go down through there, and it has rubber grommets on it. Here's our new line. So this rubber grommet, you see that the bottom is smaller than the top, which means it has to go down that way. I don't care about this line. I'm just going to push it through. A pair of pliers would be nice right about now. And for those of you who are curious, this is an MS250C with Easy Start. And what that means is this is spring loaded, so instead of ripping on the rope, you just wind it up a few times, and it has a spring loaded cam in there that kicks it over. This also had not auto chain tension, but toolless chain tension on it, and I hate that. I converted it to a standard setup when I put the 20-inch bar on it, and it does pull a 20-inch bar really well. I need a pair of pliers. These Knipex right here, I highly recommend them, and I'll probably do a video on them before too long. This is what I get for doing this after dark, but well. Now, I'm going to pre-assemble this with a filter. And come to think of it, that fuel feels nasty. It feels like this is coming apart, and I can feel that rubber in it. I'm actually not going to pre-assemble that. I just did this the other day for a friend of mine on this exact model saw, as a matter of fact. I hear the local rednecks with their lifted trucks out. No, I'm not making fun of rednecks. It's just a fact of life in the area I live in. Actually, pretty good people around here. The hardest part is getting that grommet down through that little gap right there. Now that it's down through, kind of tilt the saw and grab the line in here, and there's probably zero chance I could show that on camera, but at this point I kind of need to see more than you guys. I need to spin this. It's advisable as well. Can you see the angle that's sitting at down there? Just need to spin it so it faces towards that right hand wall of the tank. And yeah, you kind of got to tug on it a little bit, but the grommet looks like it's seated down in there. There we go. Now that it looks like it's seated, I can grab it with my pliers. Actually, needs just a little bit more. It's kind of tricky, but when you got it, you'll know. Now I need to pull the open end out. See, I've got the open end there. And my apologies for it being dark and poor lighting. I have to get this done. Now we can drop the filter back down in there. And somebody has done this before, has been in here before, because I've always heard this saw rattle. There's a filter. There's just a filter down in there hanging out, not attached to anything. So I'll get that out in a little while. Let's finish up here. Now, can you guys see the angle that filter's sitting at, laying on the bottom? That's what you want. That's exactly where it's supposed to lay. Come to think of it, there wasn't a carburetor gasket, base gasket on this engine either. That kit didn't come with one. I hope this kit did. Of course not. I will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. I gotta find a carburetor base gasket. I'm back. You didn't even know I was gone, did you? I've dug through my stash of crap, and it looks like this one's the winner. These two ports right here are the pulse ports. This is what gives it the pulse to the fuel pump to pick up the fuel from the tank. If you see a saw without a primer, it's usually a bigger saw that has a stronger pulse and doesn't need a primer. Although I do have a 1985 Poulin 2000 Woodsman. It doesn't have a primer on it, but it's got a really strong pulse. And it kind of doesn't matter which is which, but I do tend to favor the lower one. And I don't think that gasket's going to work. It's not. I need to find another gasket. Okay, I'm back. I wasn't able to find one, so I made one. And I've got a little flash in the hole. Some carburetor base plate. It's a little bit crappy, but my X-Acto knife blade is very dull. It's no big deal. It's not going to hurt anything. And you're not even going to know it looks crappy when the carburetor's on there. It's not going to affect the performance of it at all. Okay. So the choke always faces out. And it's a little bit tricky to get on there. These saws are kind of tight. Good saws, but as far as working on one, I think I prefer pooling. And I know to some of you that's utter blasphemy, but it just kind of is what it is. I'm more familiar with that brand anyway. Still though, these steel saws are awesome. They're awesome saws. I think I've pulled that off. I have. No big deal. It's not like I haven't paused the video 50,000 times already. It's just very fine detail work, and it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, if you don't have patience, and most of you who know me know that I don't, but it's not that bad. I have the patience for this, although I am losing it fairly quickly. Okay, primer line's hooked up. And I'll show you how to get that rod back in there. I guess we can go ahead and hook our fuel line up here. There are no clamps on lines or anything on these. Usually, once you start passing fuel through them, they'll kind of stick in place. Choke rod. That's that. I'm going to button up a few things and reattach that primer line. And I'll be back with you when it's time to start it. And I'm also going to get that filter out of there. I'll be right back. Okay, after 20 rage-inducing minutes, I got the fuel filter out. Oh my goodness. That was the worst. Looks like I'm going to have to take the air filter off. Now I see why they left it in there. Still, you gotta do things right, guys. You can't halfway do something. And I really thought about turning the camera back on, but I don't really want to curse on my channel. And I was angry. We're going to put in our Chinese spark plug here. If I can get my plug socket to grab that. Oh, it'd be a 21 millimeter. Alright, I got the right socket. Spark plug looks like it's burning rich. I guess it technically does burn oil. This saw has always run like crap. Now I see why. No carburetor base gasket. rotten fuel line, another fuel filter down in the tank. I guess it was just neglected. So I mean, you know, these are not cheap saws, so I got a good deal on it, knowing it needed work. And I mean, that's kind of what I do, so don't need to kill the spark plug either. This here, this is cool. This is one of Steel's cooler innovations. This is an air deflector. When it's up like this, the carburetor takes in cool air, but you can turn it around and install it in this position, and the carburetor pulls warm air from the cylinder. It's pretty ingenious. I guess they knew their users would be using these in the wintertime for firewood or down trees or whatever. And the other one I've got, it's an 025, which is the same saw. It's just after 2000 they went to MS, which is German for motor saw, but it's not motor saw. It's the German word for it. I think I'll have to tune the carburetor. I hope not. Prime it. This may take a little bit. Oh, please don't tell me my primer lines are rotten. Alright, we're going to try it. Alright. It's 10 o'clock at night. That thing's loud. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how to rebuild your carburetor in a hurry with lots of mistakes. Thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see on the channel next. If you want to see a new tool or a long-term review of one I've had for a while. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.